Okay, guys, the Sony A7 IV. Now that it's official, I'm going to tell you what I think about it. First of all, the price, the leaked price, hit it for $25.99, and the U.S. price, at least for B&H, which all the prices should be the same no matter where you buy it. Those are set prices. It's $24.99 with the body only, and if you want the kit lens, the 2870 kit lens, it's $26.98. I did watch the official press release as well as 3 or 4 other YouTubers that I follow. And first of all, the press release, it was pretty crappy. Wasn't really well done. It was a bunch of, I want to say stock photo, stock video, but it obviously was taken by, the new camera, the A7 IV, at least I believe it was. I hope it is. And it reminded me of like a robot narration, like somebody posted a YouTube video and they talk like this. It has 14 stops of high dynamic range. It's just really, really poorly done. I'm going to show you guys. I don't know if you watch it. It's out there. You can go to the I think, what is this? I'll tell you what it is. Sony camera channel. Listen to this, guys. It's horrible. I don't know how this got past any.
For a new generation of image makers.
The whole video was like that. It was just very boring, very monotone. They went through the still part of the cameras, the advantages, and then they got into the video functions. Overall, looks like a solid camera. I mean, that's no shocker, right? We knew it was going to be a good camera. What we didn't know were a few things I think it fell short on. Other things, at least I didn't know, I think it came in higher than expected. First of all, the sensor, 33 megapixel, that's what the rumor was. It came to be true. And I've seen about 3 or 4 videos again, a couple of them doing low light and high dynamic range testing. And from what I can tell from these videos, it's on par with the Sony A7 III, the one that this is the successor of. Now, there was one example in one video where the A7 IV had a slight advantage, but I wouldn't call it 2 stops. Sony, those are the Sony ratings, 13 stops, I think, or 14 stops to 15 stops. And it's not independently lab tested, so take it for what it's worth. Definitely not a bad sensor, great high dynamic range. It always was, so you're not losing anything. It's still great. That's cool. No bad there. The other thing, as far as what we thought to be with the camera, was the camera itself, the body of the camera. It is a A7S III, their new video-centric camera. That is the body in every way other than the markings for the camera model. Now, some like it. Actually, most people on YouTube like that. Everyone that says, oh, I hope it's going to be the same body when the rumor was published. Well, I don't have a ton of cameras. I don't have the A7S III. I have a Fuji body and a bunch of lenses, but I did go to Best Buy the other day, and I go there every once in a while, and they finally had a bunch of cameras. Why, I don't know, right? So you can't get cameras. The inventory is pretty much empty. I was going to buy a camera, but they didn't have it. They had the model number. They had all the model numbers, which I know that sounds stupid, but every time I go in that Best Buy, they never have any of the model numbers. So I got to try like every camera, every common camera that is out today, the new ones, the R6, the RPs, all of the Sony cameras, and it's just a chunky beast, man. And I know that's what people like about it. For me, it's a big camera. I mean, if you're doing it, paid work, no doubt, it's whatever gets you there. I'm totally on board with that. But the fun factor has to be comfort, weight, size. It's a chunky camera. I'm going to show you a picture. Now, I'll leave a link to this guy's video. I forget his name, but he's got a pretty good channel. He does mostly Sony stuff. And so this is a picture I took watching one of his videos. I wish I could remember his name, but I will leave it in the link. Or I'll leave his name across here when I'm doing the video. So on the left, you have A7 III. And on the right, you have the A7 IV again, which is the same body as the A7S III. And not only do you have a little bit bigger grip, which that part I'm okay with, but look at these side sections. Look how much girth is there. It's big. It's a big camera. And when you feel it, when you pick the cameras up side by side, you can feel the difference. Again, some people like it. To me, I don't. I get that the internals are like, the heat sinks and stuff, and you can record on this thing for like ever and ever and ever. And that's a lot of the videos. When I looked at recording times, this thing can just go on and on and on. And it just doesn't overheat. The Z battery, that we call it Z here in the US, it just goes until the battery dies. They pop another one in and they keep going. There's no recording limits. There's no heating, overheating, anything like that. So top notches. The down sample from that sensor from 7K to 4K and 24p is also like some of the best stuff I've ever seen. It does, what is it? You video guys will correct me if I'm wrong. 422 10-bit. I don't really care about that, but I know that's really important for a lot of people. They want that color science so they can do the grading after in post. I'm not trying to, if you're into that, that's cool. I just think people get a little too crazy in the YouTube world. They color grade, they do all this stuff, but I mean, I don't care if anything's a little bit slight cast to it. But again, if whatever is your thing, especially if you're into like short films, if you're into either hobby or if you're getting paid, that's where I think it comes in to a real big advantage. So I seen a comparison on the low light of this sensor and the image quality compared to the A7S3, which again is the video-centric camera, and the A7IV beat it. It appeared anyway from the YouTube channel, and again, there's a lot of compression, but even the person that had published this video said he keeps on going back and forth, but he thinks the A7IV is better. So think about it, as good or better than the A7S3, which is like $3,400, something like that. This is not a cheap camera, but at the same time, it's not $3,500. So talking about video, what's the bad thing? The Achilles heel. There's one thing I think is just the Achilles heel of this camera. Outside of the price, that's the big thing for me. I think the price is too high for what it is. The crop in 4K 60. It's basically Super 35 or a crop sensor in 4K 60. So think about it, right? You're recording something, a family video, a wedding, whatever that is, and say you don't have a zoom. A little bit easier, obviously, if you have like a 2470 f2.8, so you can adjust the zoom. Say you're shooting a prime. That's a huge difference, 1.5. So the shot that you want, you might not get it. The rolling shutter is really poor, about the same as the A7 III, so they didn't pick up any advantages there. So that's kind of a moot point, but to me, it's kind of a letdown. I think everybody was wanting to see, at least me, when that sensor was published, I would love to have seen a stack sensor. A 24 megapixel stack sensor would have been cool. Faster readout, which you don't have that in this. This is kind of a slower camera. It's that middle tier, that middle of the road, right between the A7R and the A7S. It's right in between. So I get where they're going with this, but she doesn't compete in a lot of categories as of its competitors. The direct competitor being the Canon R6. Mind you, that R6 is a year, if not older than a year old, and it does like, I think, 12 mechanical and 20 electronic. The A7IV does 10 mechanical, and I don't think it does any better in electronic or not. I don't think it does, but it doesn't really win any prizes in that category. Not a huge deal for me. I guess a lot of these things are subjective. Whatever your thing is what you should kind of put more weight towards, obviously. And for me, not a huge deal. I don't do, crazy sports and wildlife. But see, there's a lot of people that do, and one of the huge advantages that this has is the autofocus. It's got one of the best autofocuses that Sony's ever had. And if you're doing wildlife, typically those guys like to do these crazy bursts. And although the buffer doesn't fill up, from what I can tell in everybody's video, because I didn't get sent a camera, guys, is you can't really do those bursts. You got 10 frames a second, and it's like, yeah, it'd be nicer to have more for that wildlife. Portraits and stuff like that, not a big deal. So let's talk about portraits. And I'm going to be jumping around. I don't have anything written down. I'm just kind of talking to you guys. It's more of a podcasting type of video, like a lot of my videos, which my son's into it. We might change that up. We might do a father-son, put a twist on it, and have a sit down and chat about some of this stuff. So more to come on that. So where was I going? Where was I going? The image quality. So 33 megapixel. Give a little boost if you're doing some edits. Doing some finer adjustments on portraiture. Yeah, that's cool. Or if you're doing some landscape, that's nice. But again, not huge. I would have rather seen a stack sensor, even if it was going to be a lower megapixel, like a 24 megapixel. But what gains would have that been? Theoretically, you wouldn't have had rolling shutter. You would have had crazy fast burst and an e-shutter, and yeah, a usable e-shutter with no rolling shutter, that wobbliness. So it would have been more of a sports action kind of camera. I get they're not trying to cannibalize their A1 and the A9s, so I'm sure that's good for their business model, I guess. But again, where are we at? 33 megapixel. Yep, there's some more resolution, but there's not a big lift. You can crop a little bit more, but not a huge lift. The dials, I do like the dials, and I do like how they did not, on this top dial, they didn't mark it, didn't put any markings. So you got 2 dials. Supposedly they're programmable, and so you can set these how you want it, and then of course the dial in the front. So that's pretty cool. I like that, more configuration. Supposedly you can also switch in video modes, different menu options. The menu has changed. That's good. A lot of people complain about the Sony menu system. Now, I had the Sony A6300, and it wasn't great, but I never had a problem with it. I could get in that menu quick, but they did change that menu, much like it reminds me of the Canon menu system. It's touchscreen, it's got the flippy screen. That's a huge mark, a huge bonus that this camera has. And again, it is literally the body, the frame of the A7S III. What it doesn't have is, of course, they're going to leave things out. These are the things I expect to be left out with the lower price camera, the viewfinder, the LCD, not LCD, the electric viewfinder. Now, I think it's 3.6 megapixels, megadots or something, megadots. I forget how they rate the EVFs, but it's on par with some. It's not great, and I didn't expect them to put the crazy high-end 1 million dot EVF on here. So yeah, that's fine. A bump from the old one. I think the A7 III was like 2 million dots or pixels. The back screen, still horrible. I don't think Sony has the back LCD screens. I don't think they have good ones on any of their cameras, including their high-end ones. Canon does a good job, many other people do. And Sony's a electronics company. That's the funny thing. They're more of an electronics company for the parent company, but for some reason they can't put a really good high-resolution screen on the back. Kind of blows my mind. So, and they even made cell phones, or still maybe do. So the other cool thing, I think many people, including myself, wanted to see on more cameras, even when I had my A6300, but even on my Fuji cameras, is the shutter. When you take the lens off, like the Canon does, the shutter closes. Now, supposedly there's someone posted this video. I watched a few. I can't remember who said what, so forgive me. Is Sony said they were waiting because the earlier Canons had issues with people touching it, and the shutters would break. Now, it is true that there's a very expensive, very fragile piece, but I think most people buying a $3,500 camera aren't going to put their fingers through it. So really cool to see, and I think you can shut it off in the menu, but I think that's great. Sony's are just known to be horrific on getting that sensor dirty. I know my A6300, it was a APS-C sensor, and it got dirty all the time. My Fuji, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to get that dirty, and yeah, and I do try to switch lens fast. I don't keep it without the lens, but for whatever reason, Sony's are like a magnet for dust and smudges and crap. So What else about this? You know, it has the same battery. That's awesome. Don't need to change that. It's not in this picture, but I've seen it in somebody's video. I know it's a stupid thing, but the little clips, the little like keychain things, I think you may, I don't know if I have one here, but let me see if I have oh, it's downstairs. But the little rings, it almost look like a keychain rings that go on for your camera strap. It's got like these, I don't know, instead of just these dangling things, it's got more of a permanent almost fixture or a different clasp that kind of, it's more rigid, if you will, but it still moves. I don't know if it was on just a pre-release because, you know, there's a chip shortage, but they sure found a lot of chips to make a bunch of cameras to send to all these YouTube influencers, let's call them, and get you kind of pumped up. And a lot of them are just dishing it out too, going nuts. They have an A7S III, which is, you know, this is the funny thing, guys, right? So if you're in a video and this camera comes out, A7IV, this is what I don't get. You know, price of cameras, you know, $2,500, $3,000, $500-$600 here and there. In this case, we're talking about $700 or $800 between the A7IV and the A7S III. Now the A7S III obviously does like 4K, 24, 60, or, you know, 50, 60, and then 120 in 4K. And it just does so many other things in video that this doesn't have. And we weren't expecting those things, right? But if you're paying $2,500, I know this sounds stupid, and I'm not rich. If that's what you're doing, what's $300? We're not talking 2,500 and $5,000. So I don't think it's out of the realm of certain people. So if you can afford 20, it's kind of like this, right? You go out to dinner and your dinner's $100 and you're too cheap to order a glass of wine. Okay, it's going to be $110. It's not going to make or break the bank. Again, this example's a little bit further, but if you want the Sony A7S III, or yeah, the A7S III, you know, just buy it. If you're the video, if I was doing like serious video, it's just the camera I'd buy. I mean, this camera to me, who's this camera for? Wedding photographers, right? So someone that doesn't want the A7R that has just a crazy amount of megapixels because their post workflow, they don't need that, right? They're shooting like in printing like 8x10s. You don't need crazy megapixels. 24 was good. There's some people that are using the A7S III to do weddings, and it's a 12 megapixel sensor, so you don't need the megapixels. Good, yeah, 33 is not crazy, but there's a lot of guys out there that it's all about speed of processing, and they probably don't want the 33. You know, it's an extra, what is that, 40% megapixels? So you can see that as an advantage, so you can see that as a disadvantage to that target market. Now, if you're a high-end photographer, meaning you're doing like these crazy retouches and you're doing like studio work, this isn't your camera. You know, you're going to get the A7R series. You're going to want the crazy megapixels. You might go up to a medium format camera, so you just can get all of the luscious megapixels to do that fine little, you know, retouching and retouching and retouching. So I think that's where I think Sony's losing its market. It's losing its focus on who the target audience is. You know, yes, it's a hybrid camera, right? So, you know, the video, and that's kind of where I'm going. I'm starting to ramble a little bit, but where I think they should have gone is keep that 24 megapixel. That's been a sweet spot for years for a reason. Canon has jumped out and it's gone a little higher in the megapixel, but then, you know, like the A7R, you know, that sensor, the R6 rather, it came from like their top camera, which was a 20 megapixel camera. That's awesome. I mean, they'll compare this camera to the A7R, and I'd rather have the 20 megapixel camera. Anyways, so where am I going? The hybrid shooter. The hybrid shooter is the guy that's going to shoot weddings for video and weddings for stills. What's the most important thing for a wedding photographer? If you're a hybrid wedding photographer, videographer, either you're doing both or one or the other. Decent stills, fast focus, it's got all those things. But the true hybrid, to me anyway, the miss was the 4K 60 non-cropped. I mean, it didn't have to be the downsampled 7K, but it should have been a 4K 60 full frame. That just would, you know, someone could go one to the other and not change focal lengths. So I think that's a big miss. Overall, though, it's a good camera. If somebody was out looking for a camera and they didn't have anything, definitely would be two cameras I would recommend if they were looking for full frame. Sony A7IV, this is one of them obviously, and the other one would be a Canon R6. And again, the R6, it's been out for a while, it's the same price, but it being out for a while, if this chip thing ever solves itself, where it might be another year or two, so it might be a non-point, but you know, they tend to put those cameras on sale rather than the newer cameras. So we'll start seeing that, you know, third party, black market, gray market, as well as some sales much before this camera. And it's been out for a year, guys. So this is competing with a camera that's been out for a year, a Canon camera, right? So Sony has gotten us very used to just coming out and just blowing the competition just away, right? Wow. The Sony A7 III, where the other manufacturers were holding back and didn't give you 2 card slots. No, Sony says, we'll give you 2 card slots. And again, they held back in a couple things where you could get by on. They gave you 4K. 4K 30 was big back then. They gave it to you. So they gave you everything you needed. They just didn't give you the things that maybe you wanted. So that's it, guys. I just want to do this video, tell you what I thought about it, but I'd love to hear what you guys think. You buying it? You're going to wait? You think it's a good release? Please leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.